Welcome to your dog's best friend, folks. We have an absolutely dynamite show for you today. As you can see by the stars of the show, who always are dogs, never are humans. And we have two breeds on today in which you will find such deep interest as they go way, way back. Now, as we go back in dog history of where these dogs came from, at the time that they were developing dogs in the 12, 13, and 1400s, there were no actual breeds that were specified by the nobles and the lords who were doing the breeding. But they were looking for certain behavior characteristics, and they developed them in the Hoverwart, and they developed them in the Leonberger. Hoverwart is Merlin, and the Leonberger is Zoe. When the dogs were being put together, these dogs could only be used and managed by noblemen and castle owners, which were barons, and the kings and the counts. The fascinating history is just on and on and on. So we're going to start with the Hoverwart and have Beth, the owner, share a little bit about the recognition of the breed back then, what the what the nobles were looking for, and what characteristics did they want to breed this. This is a 90-pound dog. The Leonberger is 120-pound dogs. We got 200 pounds of dog on the show for you today, and it will really be fascinating. So back in the early, you picked the year, Beth, what were these dogs being bred to do, and how many breeds made up this one?
The Hoverwart is first shown in history in 12,010, and the story that was first told of the Hoverwart was when a German castle was being invaded by Slavic invaders. They massacred everyone in the castle. One baby was still alive. The Hoverwart dog was injured. That injured Hoverwart took that baby and carried it to a neighboring castle, saving the baby's life.
Without human direction?
Without human direction. The other humans were dead. The dog did this on his own, and this is characteristic. The dogs were bred to be protective and to be independent thinkers, to make their own decisions. The intent was for them to guard the estates. That particular baby grew up to be famous in German history, German legal societies, and passed laws protecting Hoverwarts. If you caused someone to lose their Hoverwart, you had to pay and you had to replace the dog.
Both. The dogs were being bred, the expression is to think for themselves. Mm-hmm. Well, that's nice in 1210 when there weren't any scientists around. But right nowadays, that's kind of like a no-no, that they think for themselves. But you and I and Sue know. Yep. They think. Dogs think. They think at the level that they think, not at our level, but they really think and they do jobs. Sue, Zoe, the Leonberger, approximately how far can you go back with the history of the breed? We have about 1210 on the Hoverwart. And what were they bred to do?
Well, officially the breed was officially recognized in 1846. The story goes that a famous breeder in Leonberg, Germany, wanted a dog that resembled a lion, and he crossed a Newfoundland with a Pyrenees and a St. Bernard, and this is the result. They were mostly owned by the wealthy and the nobility. Supposedly they were used by royalty as guard dogs. That was their main purpose. They were supposed to be used as guard dogs, but they've also been models, apparently. Many artists use them as models in their paintings. But mostly they were for guard dogs, for working. They are.
And the three breeds that made them up were all working dogs, heavy working breeds of dogs. Mm. And now we are back in the 1800s and the 12 to 1300s with this one. And the noblemen were trying to develop the overall behavioral characteristics that they wanted these dogs to do, the jobs they had to do. In those days, folks, we didn't have pet dogs. We had working dogs. Dogs had a job. If they failed to do their job, which would be hunt, get meat, tra-la, guard, be defensive, offensive, then the nobles probably ate rutabagas and turnips for the evening. They didn't have any deer or elk or bison. If these dogs didn't do their jobs, there was no meat on the table. The average size of a Leonberger, Natalie or Sue, and how much of this beautiful fur that I see, how much of that it needs to be groomed on a daily basis? Teach the public that these dogs are really great dogs, and when you look at the coat, don't go, oh my God, I don't want.
The females actually, their height ranges between 27 and 29 inches, and their weight is about 100 to 125. The males are 29 to 31 inches, and they go from like 120 to 160. As far as their coat, they have a double coat. It resembles a lion, and their coloring is usually like yellow to black, a little bit of reddish. It's dense, and it sheds a lot. We groom her usually every 8 to 10 weeks, and I try to brush her several times a week. And there are 2 heavy sheddings that she does in a year. So they definitely are high maintenance for shedding.
And that thick coat, it comes from the Newfoundland. They're water dogs too.
The Newfoundlands were bred to rescue semen that were dumped into the ocean from shipwrecks, which Natalie just brought out. The coat is water repellent. And the Newfoundland's job was to save sailors that were drowning due to a shipwreck. And that is into the Leonberger. And so they can do that also. The brushing and combing, I think, is just normal for any dog, like a terrier or a cocker spaniel. But there is a couple of heavy sheddings that you brought about. And then there's once a year that was something special.
Twice a year usually.
Okay.
It's usually, I know one of them is actually right now, right before summertime. She has a heavy shedding. And the other one I'm thinking is probably around winter time. So I usually have to vacuum just about every day.
And Beth, with your Hovevot, how about the grooming with this particular dog?
Very, very similar. He has a similar thick coat. We talked about Newfoundlands involved with the Leonbergers. The Hofavarts almost went extinct.
Really?
Right around 1900.
Was that due to war?
That one was not due to war. They did almost lose both the Newfoundlands, both the Hofavarts and the Leonbergers during World War I and II when they were used heavily for war. But just circumstances, civilization moving in, there were fewer Hofavart, fewer farm dogs around. And the Koenig family stepped up and collected all the Hofavarts they could find and interbred them with a number of dogs that included Newfoundlands and Leonbergers. So they have that similar double coat. They have the 2 big sheds a year called throwing their coat, where their coat comes out in clumps and you literally pick up clumps of their hair around. It takes a fair bit of brushing. But it's a beautiful coat. It makes them love water. It makes them love cold weather. When all the other dogs are huddling by my fireplace, he's out laying in the snow going, wow, what a pretty day.
Yes. I walk a Great Pyrenees occasionally for a friend. And in the wintertime, which is difficult for me to walk, the dog, he jumps into snowbanks all on his own. And he just lays there. And this is my thing. Yeah, I really am happy here.
Yes, actually.
So when you see all these dogs here, they are very playful, friendly, and loving dogs. When you look at the size of them, don't let that turn you off. We have dogs that are bigger, such as Great Danes and the Mastiffs. And in the Newfoundland and German and the Leonberger, way back when they were being put together, what were the people at the time trying to think of what they wanted ultimately for this dog to do? What kind of a job?
Companionship and protection.
Companionship and protection.
Yes.
They have a very calm and steady personality. They're not hyper, very athletic, extremely loving, powerful dogs too. But you know, one of their traits is they're extremely agile. When most people see Zoe, the first thing they think of is, I could never have that dog in my house.
Yes.
But it's not like that. She can maneuver her way around furniture. The only problem we do have is when she goes up and down the steps, she tends to be a little rambunctious. But other than that, she is extremely agile. She's never ruined anything in the house.
So we're talking about a pleasant personality.
Very pleasant.
I have a 100-pound dog that I have, and I adopted from the Fairfax County Humane Society. What he does is the same as yours do. He maneuvers around the furniture. He never bumps into anything.
Right.
And he always is comfortable wherever he is because he makes his own way, which now we're going to switch back to the Hovevot because they make their own way. Beth, what are a few more regaled stories that you can share about how these dogs work for themselves, such as maybe going up a step like a service dog? How is this dog helpful to you?
Well, Merlin is trained as my service dog. If I am getting ready to go up the steps, all I have to do is say, Merlin, help me, which he's not listening, thank goodness. And he'll be at my side waiting for me. And if he doesn't have his special harness on, I can just hold his scruff between the shoulder blades. And he will support me and take me up the steps. That I trained him to do. The interesting thing, and this comes to the part of dogs being taught to think for themselves. One time when he was helping me, I got dizzy. And he was never trained for that. That's not something that usually happens. But he picked up on it, and he immediately body blocked me against the wall and supported me until the dizziness passed.
That's a real service dog.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen otter hounds used for people with mobility challenges, and Great Danes used for people with mobility challenges. And they have this innate mechanism that works up in their head that when their owner or their trainer is in jeopardy, they actually will block. They'll step into them, block against the wall, block going up the steps. They have an intuitive sense, which I call the sixth sense, and I believe there is a sixth sense. We'll have a show on that one day, sixth sense. They can do these things on their own because that's the way they were bred to do that. The Hobart was bred to think. The Leonberger was bred to help and guard and think, and they have all these characteristics. Any other thing that you would like to bring out about Merlin as far as helping is concerned?
He has an innate ability to use his body that I don't even quite know how to describe it. Like if I get into a low couch, I have trouble getting up because I've got artificial joints. My husband has tried to help me, and my husband, as a thinking human being, cannot master the shift when I get part way up and have to shift from pulling to pushing. But he does it automatically. Again, I use the scruff right between his shoulder blades, and he does the shift. As I'm pulling up, he'll actually take steps backwards, which he figured that part out on his own, to help leverage me out of the seat. And then as soon as I need to shift to standing up, he will shift his body so that I'm pushing on him. And he's totally natural doing all of that for me.
You can feel his muscles tense, can you?
Yep.
I can feel it in my dog. His muscles actually tense. When I press down on my dog, he presses upwards.
Yep.
That is absolutely marvelous. Natalie, how does this dog, the Leonberger, fit into your life?
She's
What do you do with this dog of a pleasant circumstances? Where do you take him?
I walk her all the time. I live not far from a battlefield, a Civil War battlefield, and I take her for walks there frequently, and there are usually crowds around wherever I'm walking her because it's not a common breed, and she attracts a lot of attention whenever I take her for walks. But she's my exercise buddy. They don't usually need a lot of exercise, but she likes it, you know. We take long hikes, and she enjoys it.
And when little children come up, the parents really want to know, when the little ones come up, the 4, 5, 6, 8, with their fingers and their pleasant voices and wanting to touch. Is that tolerable to this dog?
Oh, absolutely.
So their personalities are gentle and sweet.
Yes, extremely. They're very good with kids.
They're very patient, very tolerant. One thing I have to say is she's extremely protective, because if my fiance comes toward me to give me a hug and Zoe is there, all the time she gets right in between us. I'm not sure if she's trying to protect me, my fiance, or if she just wants attention, but I do have to say that she's definitely more attracted to the males versus the females. She likes females, but she definitely likes males better, male humans.
So we have a dog blocking here, and we have a dog blocking here.
Yes.
Beth with the Hobart, Sue and Natalie with the Leonberger.
Yeah.
And we got a couple of guys that probably could run on the Redskins this season, blocking for the quarterback.
She's a great blocker.
Wonderful. And their personalities are so gentle and so sweet.
Yeah, they are.
And probably they were bred exactly for that. We're winding down the first segment now. I want to thank both you guys for coming along and teaching about these dogs. We have a lot more information to teach the public out there. This is a teaching show, not a tricky dog show. And I'm sure the public will be fascinated by these two dogs, these giant breeds of dogs here. They're just very gentle and very sweet. Don't be afraid of them, public. They are lovely, lovely dogs. Welcome back to Your Dog's Best Friend. We have another wonderful segment with these two beautiful, beautiful dogs. And we're going to talk a little bit about animal thinking. It used to be a no-no in the science genre about animals thinking, but then there's the other half of the house, of which there are 4 up here right now, that no animals think. And they have their own level of thinking. as well as porpoises and the killer whales. They don't think at our level. They can't do logic, I think. But we're going to talk a little bit about how they think. So we have a wonderful effort with Merlin on his part with how he protected two little girls from water problems. What is that all about?
From water problems? I think you got two
Bear,
stories.
from a bear, sorry.
It actually wasn't Merlin, but it was one of the dogs from our club. Was out with the two little girls and his family. They had taken him out for a walk, and they heard a noise in the bushes, and so they thought they'd go investigate. Well, when they investigated, they roused a bear. And so they did like little girls do. They screamed and took off running, and the bear immediately saw prey and took off after them. The dog, realizing what was going on, pulled away from the little girls, took the leash out of his hand, which he would normally never do, placed himself between the two girls and the bear, and literally backed the bear down and saved the little girls from the bear.
And he did that without no human direction.
No human direction, no training. Nobody had ever assumed or even guessed that he would find himself in the woods with a bear and his two little girls.
Of course. When the breeders, the nobles, were breeding the dogs way back in the 12 and 1300s, they wanted that kind of behavior because of the horrible conditions of war when the Slavs decided to invade the castles, and the barons and the lords were all killed by the Slavs. They needed some kind of dog with a protection nature. And the Leonbergers do that also, and they have a way of blocking that I'd like you to share, either Natalie or Sue, about when a person comes up to you and grasps your hand or gives you a hug. What do they do if they sense, uh-oh, mommy's in jeopardy?
They will absolutely get between us. It doesn't matter whom I hug. It could be a female, it could be a male. She will get between us. And I would think that after a while she would be used to the same person hugging me, and she would feel secure enough to know that everything is okay. I tend to think it's a protective mechanism, not a jealousy one, because Zoe really has never shown any signs of jealousy. I think it's just protecting mommy.
I would think the same thing.
Yeah.
And the actual ability of the dog to do that innately is incredibly marvelous, without any human interaction or direction on the dog's side. And as you say, it's a blocking mechanism, and it's not an aggressive mechanism.
No.
It's just something that I'm bred to do, so I think I'll do it right now.
Right.
But somebody's approaching mommy.
Yes.
That's my job.
She does a very good job.
In terms of the social aspects of Zoe the Leonberger, do you take her out to picnics and ball games and all wonderful public agreements like that?
I have to say, no matter where we take her, we had her to Virginia Beach about a year ago, and we were walking the boardwalk, and we couldn't go literally 25 or 30 feet without being stopped every 25, 30 feet. What type of dog is that?
Yes.
You know, what is she called? What is she bred from? How much does she weigh? We get stopped all the time. It took us a long time to walk the whole boardwalk.
Virginia Beach was my home for many, many years. I've been on that boardwalk, and I can see the people stopping you with incredible questions. When I'm walking the Great Pyrenees, is how much does it weigh?
Right.
How much food does it eat?
Yes.
How much does it eliminate? This is what all the public wants to know about these humongous dogs. And they don't realize that they don't eat 18 pounds of food at a time.
Everybody thinks,
My dog eats four cups
4 cups.
sitting,
Okay.
and that's once a day, and he's a 100-pounder. How about yours?
She does not eat very much at all. I mean, she can go actually a day and a half without even eating. Food is not important to her.
Right.
I do feed her a raw diet, so she gets raw chicken, raw beef, organs from meat. She gets veggies, fruit. She loves cheese. I give her a raw egg with the shell. Occasionally I do give her a little bit of kibble, but 99% of her diet is raw.
You are off into a wonderful topic of scientifically formulated dog food, which I could go on for a half an hour about the junk on the shelves.
Yeah.
And then you just said, I don't feed that junk. I feed a scientifically formulated dog food. But I don't have a factory. I'm giving her stuff I have in my kitchen.
Right.
That's wonderful. Beth, how do you feed your dog?
Merlin does get some very high quality kibble, but I only go with the really high quality kibbles.
Yes.
He also gets a lot of, quote, table scraps, but not the way most people think of table scraps. When people ask me, can I feed the dog from my table, I say only if you eat healthier than most people in the United States.
Good.
Merlin, we have a big salad for dinner every night. That's the major part of our dinner. Merlin and our other dogs are all right there around from the very first cut of they do the lettuce, the cabbage, the beets, the carrots, the celery, all of the vegetables that go into our salad that are safe for dogs, they get some of. Vegetables are very healthy for dogs, and they're getting fresh vegetables just like we use for our human consumption.
The lesson here is protein is high, fat is fairly high. The key, though, is scientifically formulated, even though it's developed out of the owner's heads. It is assimilable and available to the dog's bodies, where the other junk kind of foods are not. Right. And the waste products are pretty plentiful. Yeah. I'm glad we got off into this, because the variety of dog foods out there is beyond count. Right. And you're giving your dogs a wonderful, wonderful, healthy diet. Schutzhund training. A different kind of training, folks. Schutzhund has 3 components to it. Obedience, confirmation, and attack, I believe.
Obedience, tracking.
Tracking.
And
obedience,
protection.
Tracking, and attack.
Protection,
Guard,
yeah.
Protection dog. You have some experience with this, Beth.
I worked with, it was my previous Hofewart to Merlin. And the interesting thing there, and this again is an issue of the dog, or an explanation of the dog thinking. The trainers I worked with, and I don't like this training method, but they tied the dogs and teased them from outside the length of the chain.
Standard. As
a way of getting the dogs roused. Ditto ran to the end of the chain, hit it once, ran to the end of the chain, hit it a second time, sat down and thought about it a minute, walked to the end of the chain, and sat there and watched the trainers going, hee, making fools of themselves.
That is really incredible.
Well, what gets even better is the trainer looked at me and said, this dog has no protection instinct at all. He will never do Schutzhund. The next week, that man walked up behind me in the parking lot while I was unloading my car. Ditto was sitting outside the car beside me. I had my head in the car. He approached from behind. Ditto saw that as a protection situation, and that trainer found himself up against the car, a paw on each shoulder, barking right here, about 3 inches from his nose. And he looked at me and said, where did you get this dog? I said, that's the dog you said had no protection instinct.
They were bred to think for themselves. We've said that 6 times, and I want to keep saying that because the public needs to know. It's not a stubborn dog. It's not an obstinate dog. It's not a dog that doesn't want to be trained.
Leave it.
And here he comes back to the show.
Leave it, Merlin. Leave it. Over here. Merlin, I have your treat over here. Merlin. Over here.
Here he comes.
That was a better treat than this one, I know.
I want to bring out the fact that this dog, when the agitators are agitating the potential protection dogs, they do so with intended ugliness, because they pretend to be robbers and bank robbers and thugs on the street. But they're not. They're just everyday humans that are agitators. And they stand outside the range of the chain, so the dog can't get to them physically, and they agitate. And the dogs naturally become very, very nastily aggressive. Okay, that's a protection training. That's fine. But this dog went to the length of the chain twice, chugged himself, and the 3rd time said, I ain't going to do this anymore. I'm going to sit here and look at you.
Yeah.
And the next day, he was in the agitator's face with his big mouth and his big teeth. These are fantastic dogs. That's the lesson of today's show, folks. These are fantastic dogs. You needn't be fearful of them. They're great with people. They're sweet, sweet temperaments. But they have a job to do up here. And they do it. Now, when you get dizzy and Merlin braces you, how many seconds do you get dizzy before he releases you again? Or is that measurable? 5 seconds, 18 seconds?
I don't know that it's measurable.
Okay.
Usually about the time I'm ready to tell him that it's enough, he is starting to release me. So
well, for myself, I get
reading
disequilibrium. It's about 8 to 10 seconds for me. And my dog will release and Merlin will release. Do the Leonbergers have any of these innate characteristics such as the Hovewarts?
She picks up the differences between adults and children.
Does she?
And especially people who are disabled. Usually she's pretty energetic, she's pretty friendly and affectionate, but in a situation where someone is disabled or unbalanced, or when she's working with children, she calms down considerably.
She does, yeah.
That is known as the chemical signature of the human being. We all have a chemical signature, and we give it off from pheromones. We give it off from our skin, and we're doing it right now. And it's not unusual because the dogs are conditioned to us. But if something fierce happens, like a thug comes in here with a gun in his hand, these dogs would react without any guidance.
Yes.
And that's all done by the chemical signature of the person. So the reason that Zoe is so friendly with disabled is because she's got this nose up here that can scent discriminate 1 part in 3 trillion. That's pretty small, isn't it? 1 part in 3 trillion. And the disabled person is giving off a different chemical signature than you or I. And they smell it. And that's why they're so wonderful as therapy dogs.
They are.
They go into hospitals. They go into nursing homes. They go into sitting homes, retirement communities. And the doctors in the hospitals and the therapists in the hospitals nowadays are asking the trainers, when can you get these dogs back here? You have accomplished what we haven't been able to accomplish in 2 years.
Right.
I'm not exaggerating. The dogs have something about them, this sixth sense, that they can calm down an agitated person or a person who is disabled and not able to function very well. And they do it so brilliantly. And it's all done with this and what they hear and what they see. But principally, it's this one, right here. Now, in terms of seeing eye dogs, these dogs are incredibly crafted and trained. And we have a wonderful real-life example of how the Morris Animal Foundation with the seeing eye dogs, how this dog here, or back in the 30s, you tell the story, please.
Back in the 30s, and it was a German Shepherd.
Yes.
And it was one of the very first seeing eye dogs in the United States. This whole story has been put into a Disney movie entitled Love Leads the Way, A True Story. And it's the story of this man being told he could not use his service dog in public places. And he took a legal approach to trying to change this for all of us. And when he went to the hearing, they said, please have your dog bring you to the podium. So he directed the dog. And as the dog tried to take him to the podium, they moved chairs and things in the way and literally blocked the dog from doing his job.
Really?
And the dog just looked at the chair, said, can't go that way, and very carefully threaded the guy through the room until he found a way to get the guy to the podium. The man couldn't see what was going on, but the dog got the man where he was going by using the logic to bypass.
And that's a movie, Love Leads the Way. We're going to close down with this magnificent Leon burger here. But I want to bring out the fact that that's a movie, a Hollywood movie, and this dog that was trained to be a seeing eye dog, or in the training process, and the owner...
He was fully trained.
Morris, I believe, the owner. Or
Morris
trainer.
Frank was the owner.
Morris Frank. The Morris Animal Foundation, Morris Frank, his dog, led a blind person past chairs that were set up to block all that from happening, and the dog threaded his way through and led the person. We have thoroughly enjoyed doing this show for you folks, and that nice close with the Leon Burger and little slurpee.
She's got good
right
timing.
in order. Super show. See you next time, folks, on Your Dog's Best Friend.